Hi everyone, you are watching Biology with Inshra, and in today's video we are going to be discussing a number of MCQs, or in other words, we will be solving some past paper questions, mainly paper 1 for this video on the chapter Methods of Transport involving diffusion, osmosis, and active transport. Now, I do recommend that you watch my videos on diffusion, osmosis, and active transport and clear your concepts, because if your concepts are not clear, then you will struggle to solve the MCQs here, because although MCQs seem easy, they are generally tricky, and what the examiner does is that the examiner does his or her very best to confuse the student, and you need to be 101% sure with your answer. You need to think that, okay, this is the answer, I'm 101% sure that this is the answer, because even if you have a little bit of a doubt with your answer, then it could be wrong, because the answers are very similar and it gets kind of confusing to tell which one is the correct one or which one is the wrong one, or sometimes 2 or 3 of them may seem correct. So clear your concepts. In GCSE, O levels, and A levels, your concepts need to be clear if you want to tackle your MCQs. Also understand that if you want to revise or if you want to study the the topics, then the links to the videos of diffusion, osmosis, and active transport can be found in the description box, either down below or above, depending on if you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook. So let's get started. With that being said, let us start solving the questions. So let's start with the first one. Now, the first one, the one that I'm underlining here right now, do follow my cursor so that you know where I am or where I am not, and so that you and I are on the same page. So, which is an example of active transport? Movement of glucose into the cells of the villi, or well, this is the answer, to be frank, because there are just too many examples in the O levels 5090, and the first one is uptake of glucose, and the second one is uptake of iron. So just remember that uptake of glucose from the small intestine or uptake of ions through the root hair cells are the 2 main examples of active transport. So it's actually A, but then again you need to be 100% sure. So read your other options and don't just circle it. I just circled it, just because I'm 100% sure, but just for you guys. Movement of glucose molecules down the concentration gradient, definitely no, because this here is it says down the concentration gradient, and active transport is against the concentration gradient, so it's not B. Movement of ions in blood plasma, and indeed movement of water in the transpirational stream, no. These two don't happen against the concentration gradient, and thereby not being examples of active transport, so it's A. Okay, coming to B. 5 pieces are cut from a potato, all of equal size. Now they're of equal size, and then they're of equal shape. Okay, let me just get the highlighter, it's better. Okay, so they're of equal size, and then they're of equal shape, and they're about 5 pieces of potato, and these potatoes are placed in a sugar solution, which means they're placed in water containing dissolved sugar, and the solutions are of different concentrations. So after 4 hours, the change in the length of each potato piece is measured. The results are shown in the graph. Now if you look at the graph here, you need to observe very carefully that percentage change in the length of the potato. Now this here is showing the change of the potato's length, and this here is shown by the y-axis, right? And then we have the x-axis, which is this line, just follow my cursor, which is showing the concentration of the sugar solution in moles per dm cube, right? And this is here shown by the x-axis, okay? So, which concentration of sugar solution has approximately the same concentration as the potato? What does this mean? You can read it yourself if you want, but I'll just explain it. You can pause the video and then read it, but I'm not gonna explain it. But I'm going to explain the meaning of the question. The question means at what percentage or at what concentration is the length of the potato same as the concentration of the solution? So when is that point when this and this, I'll just underline this and this is the same, right? And if you read the question, it says which concentration has approximately, and if you go on further, then the answer is in moles per dm cube, right? So this implies that your answer is somewhere in the x-axis, because then again this moles per dm cube is being shown by the x-axis, so it should be this intersection here shows, which is 0.15 by the way, so it's B. that the percentage change of the length is equal to the concentration of the sugar solution, thereby saying that they both are the same as asked for the question. So it is B. Okay, I've rubbed the highlightings because it was getting messy, so if you just want to watch it again, you can always rewind and have another go at the questions, but I'm moving on. 3. The diagram shows some cells in the root. Okay, this is showing the root hair cells of an actively growing plant. Okay, it's getting continued here. So how does the water potential of the cell marked 2, which is right here, cell marked 2, differ from the water potential of the cell marked 3, which is right here? And how do the mineral ions mainly enter cell marked 1 here? So let's first solve this part of the question. Water potential of the cell marked 2 is higher than cell 3, higher than cell, okay, right, higher than cell 3, higher than cell 3, lower than cell 3, lower than cell 3. It's either one of them. Well, water moves here. Here's how water moves. So water, let me show you by the arrow. Water moves from here, and then it continues moving until it reaches the xylem vessel. So you need to understand that the water potential should be more here, and it should be less here, because osmosis, water is taken from osmosis in the root hair cells of a plant, and you need to know that osmosis happens from a region of higher to a region of a lower concentration. So this is more and this is less, so it should be either A or B, but we haven't done this part of the question yet, so let's read that. Mineral ions mainly enter the cell. Well, we studied that ions enter the root hair cell of a plant mainly through active transport. It does happen by diffusion as well, but majorly happens by active transport. So the answer is A. It's not, well, it's definitely not B, because it majorly does not happen by diffusion. Okay, and then this is wrong. Okay, moving on. 4. The mass. Yeah, so where was I? Yeah, the mass of a cube of fresh potato is found. It is then placed in a test tube containing a dilute solution of sucrose. Sucrose is a type of sugar. After a day, its mass has increased. This implies that water has been absorbed by the potatoes. So which process has occurred, and what has happened to the concentration of the sucrose in the solution in the test tube? Okay, so the process is definitely osmosis, because this here is involving the movement of water. Well, it's either C or D, but let's check this part of the question. The sucrose concentration. So it's asking what has happened to the concentration of the sucrose in the solution in the test tube. Well, it has increased. It has increased because water has left the solution, and when water has left the solution, the concentration of the sucrose increases because the amount of sucrose is greater than the amount of water molecules, thereby being D. Okay, moving on to the next question, 5. This is a new page here because we're done with the last one. Which is a function of adrenaline? Now this is not related to our topic, but let's still solve it for the sake of increasing knowledge, because this will come in the future questions. So adrenaline is a hormone made by us humans, and basically it is made when it's a bit of an explanation related to that, and we're not studying anything related to hormones, but let's read the options. To convert glycogen to glucose, to decrease the breathing rate, to increase the rate of peristalsis in the ileum, to stimulate the cells of the liver to take up glucose. Now just understand this, I'll keep it as simple as I can. Adrenaline is basically released to convert glycogen into glucose. Glycogen is the stored form of sugar in our bodies, and it is made into glucose when we have to run or perform any activity, like maybe a thief has broken into your house and you're scared. And when you're scared, what happens is that the hormones released in your body, that adrenaline released, will convert your glycogen into glucose, so that you will have that energy need to run. So the respiration happens at a faster rate. Okay. Well, why would adrenaline decrease your breathing rate? You need more oxygen, so that more oxygen is present to break down glucose in the process called respiration, making more energy. Now, peristalsis, ileum, and the liver, they are not related here. Okay. So 5, the answer to 5 is A. Okay, B, D, C, and D are not related. 6. The small intestine of a person contains a low concentration of glucose produced from the digestion of starch. That's true. We discussed it in the previous videos. Glucose is taken by the cells of the villi. Now, how does glucose move? This is very, very easy. By active transport against the concentration gradient, by active transport with the concentration gradient, by diffusion. No, it's not. But it's not C. It's not D, because it definitely happens by active transport. They've made it very simple because they've mentioned it themselves that there's a low concentration. See, it's written here, low concentration of glucose. So it's A. Why? Because it is against, active transport is always against the concentration gradient. Okay? Okay, let's move on with 7. I just put it up. Okay, 7. Sorry. In 7, diagram 1 shows an onion cell. This is a plant cell. You can tell by the regular shape. Cell that has been placed in pure water, right? So this here has been placed in pure water. And now the cell is now placed in a more concentrated sugar solution, which means containing less water. Okay? Now it changes to appear as in diagram 2, right here. Okay? After change. Which statement explains the change? So definitely the sugar has not moved. Why would the sugar increase the size of the cell? The sugar remains in the water. It's dissolved. It's the water that's moving. Yeah, though you can say the water is carrying the sugar, because if it is a simple sugar, or then the simple sugar is dissolved in the water. But if it's a complex sugar or a disaccharide, then that's not dissolved in water. Anyway, so water has moved into the cell. No, it has moved into the cell, because then again, if you can no wait, it has not moved into the cell. It has moved out of the cell. Why out of the cell? Now this is a perfectly normal cell, and when placed in a water that is concentrated, the amount of water is less in that solution, and the water potential is more within the cell. So more water moves from the cell into the solution. So you can tell, because you see this here is the cell membrane, and the outer region, which I'm going to color as this red here, is our cell wall. The cell wall is there in its original position, but what about the cell membrane? This here is the cell membrane. See? Cell membrane has pulled away from the cell wall. It has been plasmolized because it has been placed in a concentrated solution. Thereby water has left the cell, right? It has decreased in volume. And you can also see that this here is the vacuole, right? This region that I'm coloring, don't confuse, well, this is not a vacuole, don't confuse it. This is the vacuole, and this is the nucleus. Okay, so it is D, right? And the trick here is because the cell membrane has pulled away from the cell wall, it has been plasmolized. Okay, 9. Which process can take place in a root hair cell when oxygen which process can take place in a root hair cell when oxygen is not present? So when oxygen is not present, active transport cannot happen, because it needs oxygen, so that glucose is broken down by oxygen in the process called respiration, and then energy is used for active transport. So it's definitely not A. Yes, it could be B, but let's read it. Definitely not C, because active transport is coming here. Well, the answer to the following question should be D. Why D? Because diffusion and osmosis, as discussed earlier in the last video, are passive processes. They do not require energy, because they don't need oxygen to break down glucose. 10. The table shows the concentration of some mineral ions in the root hair of a plant and in the soil around it. So the concentration of the mineral ions is shown in the root hair cell and also in the soil around it. So let's have a look at here. So the concentration of magnesium ions is 75 in the root hair and 15 in the soil. The concentration of nitrate is 126 in the root hair and 47 in the soil. How are these mineral ions absorbed from the soil by the plant? Now let's have a look at magnesium first. Here's magnesium, here's nitrate. Now if you can see, the concentration is more in the root hair and less in the soil, and the ions move from the soil. It moves like this, from the soil to the root, right? This should be active transport, right? And as for this, well, they both are active transport, because then again the concentration is less in the soil and more in the root, so it's moving against the gradient. So it is it is A. Answer is A. Okay, moving on to the next question, which is the 12th question here. Which of these processes require energy from respiration? It's none. Nor diffusion nor osmosis. Only active transport requires energy from respiration. So it's D. Right? It's better to read the key as well. I didn't read the key because, well, this is very basic, a tick and a cross, but just read the key just in case, okay? So that you don't end up making mistakes. So they both are passive processes. Okay, moving on to 13. So 4 identical pieces of potato are treated in 2 stages, as shown. Which piece of potato will be the largest after 2 hours? After 2 hours? Okay. So let's have a look at question number 12. So it says here that in stage 1, if you can read it here, in stage 1, it was boiled in water for 10 minutes and then it was placed in a 10% salt solution for 2 hours. Okay. Then in stage 1, the potato was boiled in water for 10 minutes. So when you're boiling it, it's actually losing water, right? In boiling, anything you boil, it loses water, especially potato. You can tell because it gets crumbly and crinkly, right? In stage 2, after having lost water, it is placed in a 10% salt solution, so it should gain, right? It should gain. But the question says the one that has gained the most. Same thing happens in B, and then it is placed in distilled water for 2 hours. Okay. This should gain more. Why? The reason why it should gain more is because the one in A has a 10% salt, right? It has some salt, thereby lowering its concentration, its water potential. Now, this is actually the best one in C and D because it's unboiled and it has not lost any water. So it's D. Why? Because then again, this here has some salt, and those salt, the 10% salt, is actually lowering the water potential. But normally distilled water, just keep this as a fact, has the highest water potential, right? This is a fact. You can write it down, remember it. Having the highest water potential, it should easily, the potato treated in D will be the largest after 2 hours. Okay. Below is a series of some cell processes. Mineral ions entering the root hair cells, glucose uptake by the villus cells, and water entering root hair cells. Which of these involves active transport? Okay. Mineral ions entering root hair cells, it's 1. Glucose uptake by villus cells, it is 2. No, it's not 3. 3 happens from osmosis, water. It's involving a liquid, so it's 1 and 2 only. Okay, moving on to 15th. The one here that I'm underlining here, I guess. Okay. The sentence describes the uptake of water by a plant. Well, the word osmosis should click to your mind because it is describing the uptake of water by a plant. Water moves into the root hair cells of a plant by osmosis through a 1. Should be partially, either C or D, okay? Why partially? Because we know that osmosis can only happen through a semi-partially or selectively permeable membrane, as it is not possible for it to happen without a partially or selectively permeable membrane. So in the options that we've been given here, it's either C or D. Well, let's continue. So partially permeable cell membrane, okay, comma, down or up. Down, a water potential gradient. It is down because water moves from a region of higher water potential to a region of a lower water potential, or from an area where the number of water molecules is more to an area where the number of water molecules is less. Okay, so water potential gradient is the same as the concentration gradient, but the only difference is that water potential gradient is for liquids, water molecules. So it is A. No, sorry, C, yeah. Partially, right? So it is C. There we go. Last one. Which process needs energy from respiration? Very, very simple. Movement of carbon dioxide into the alveoli. Now this is related to the chapter respiration and the breathing mechanism, and basically gas exchange in humans happen from diffusion. So no, this process does not need energy from respiration. Movement of oxygen into the red blood cells. This also happens from diffusion, so no. Uptake of glucose by the cells in the villi. Yes, it is C. Because then again, the two main examples and the one majorly one is written here. Uptake of water by root hair cells. No, this is basically an example of osmosis, right? And osmosis does not need energy. Okay, guys, that's it. I hope you were able to understand something, or I hope you learned something, or got your concepts cleared and got an idea of the past paper questions in this video. If you're watching this on Facebook, like, follow, share, and if you're watching this on YouTube, then subscribe, like, comment down below. Do share with your friends and families, and as always, keep learning. See you next week.